PhD in computer anthropology and health. He's an adjunct associate professor, Department of Family and Community Medicine here at UTHSCSA. And he'll be talking today on the Witte Museum resources for sustaining wellness throughout the lifespan. So please welcome Dr. Bryan Bayles.
I can sing. No, I can sing. That's fine. If I dance,
It's scooted up.
if I dance around, I'll speak loudly. Well, thank you for having me. I'm going to go ahead and get comfortable here. So the first thing I want us to all do, because I'm going to talk a little bit about physical activity, is everybody just stand up. I know. And just stretch a little bit. Just get a few stretches in there, real slowly. There you go. All right, thank you. And then just shake it out. All right. Okay. So my story, is a bit of an odd one. I'm a cultural anthropologist by training. Spent many years down in Central America working with indigenous Mayan and here in South Texas with curanderos and traditional healers, which led to, oddly enough, a position here in family and community medicine, studying alternative medicine and patients' use of supplements and herbs and those kinds of things, and really trying to encourage a dialogue around those issues. But it also, as a result of being in San Antonio in South Texas, led to some research with some colleagues in family medicine around obesity and diabetes, and cultural competency issues as well, particularly around those issues, those chronic illnesses. But I'll get to the story of how I ended up at the Witte Museum of all places. How many of you, first of all, have ever been to the Witte Museum? Okay, good. So everyone's familiar with it, and sort of why I went there. And I'll be honest with you, I'm here in part because one, I want to show you a little bit about what we've been doing with the grand opening of our new HEB Body Adventure, but also to encourage you to contact me and brainstorm a little bit, and I'm in the process of reaching out because I think particularly around the issue of seniors, our senior and older citizens in the community, I think we have more work to do, particularly in the HEB Body Adventure. And so I'm looking for ideas. We have a lot of ideas already and some very beginning steps, but it's something that I've been tasked with developing more, and am looking for creative and fun ideas. So what I just want to talk about real briefly is review some of the guidelines for physical activity in older adults. I'm on the Mayor's Fitness Council, particularly on the Active Living Subcommittee, and one of our tasks, I'm not a particular specialist in physical activity or physical fitness. However, I work closely with the Mayor's Fitness Council particularly around the area of physical activity. There are sort of two pillars, physical activity and nutrition, that sort of form Mayor Castro's spearheaded efforts towards Fit City San Antonio, and I'll talk a little more about that. But and then just kind of talk a little bit about this model that we're developing, that we've developed and as I said, are continuing to develop because we've really just begun at the Witte Museum, of all places, to address wellness, lifelong wellness, and healthy aging is a big part of that, and I believe is going to be an increasing part of this, of our programming and our actual exhibition or experience content. But then briefly just touch on a few additional local and national tools that if you're not already, and many of you may already be aware of some of these, but they're really good resources, particularly to tap into encouraging physical activity in older adults. Why? I mean, I'm not going to belabor this too much, obesity trends, but This is the Behavioral Risk Factor Survey from 1990, and you can just see it getting redder and redder and oranger. Obesity has essentially tripled in the last 30 to 50 years, and you know, the thing is we made, as some of you may have seen in the news recently, that a good friend of mine, Dr. Schlenker, who's the director of the San Antonio Metropolitan Health District, they were very pleased to announce that we made some headway in reducing obesity among adults in Bexar County. But and he'll be the first to tell you, we still have a long way to go. And there's a couple things behind that encouraging trend of overall statistical reduction in obesity among adults, and that is the rates of severe obesity have actually increased. And furthermore, the rates of obesity among those who are 65 and older actually have increased from 31% to about 35%. So we have some, in addition to other significant disparities that ethnicity and income disparities that continue to persist, we're seeing some, you know, areas that we definitely have some work to do. Consequences of obesity, again, I probably don't need to tell you guys about this, but one of the things that I was struck with as with a public health background is that when we really look at, strictly from a public health standpoint, what the top 10 killers in our nation are, and from the Surgeon General's reports that come out periodically, really about 7 out of 10 of them boil down to lifestyle issues. They basically come down to lifestyle issues. They're not things that are going to be fixed with a surgery or a pill or a magic pill or some later intervention. We can certainly, those interventions are needed. They're very essential. I myself, at 44, about 5 weeks ago, just had a stent put in. And I was one of those, unfortunately, that kind of bucked the trend. I had no family history, no smoking, mildly high cholesterol, but my LAD was 99% blocked, and I just about dropped. So I'm very thankful for those, those interventions. Having said that, in general, a lot of what feeds those illnesses, and mine as well to some extent, are poor diet, lack of being active, and sedentary lifestyles, and an over-reliance on highly processed foods and those kinds of things. And those go all the way up the chain, from our youngest kids up to our oldest citizens. So how much physical activity, you know, is recommended at the national level from National Institute of Aging and NIH and so on? And essentially, and again, this is again a guideline for a generally fit with no limiting health conditions, which is obviously not everyone, and so which is precisely why we encourage everyone, and I personally do, to talk with their physicians before starting any kind of exercise regimen, or at least any significant change in the level of physical activity that they're used to. But 2 hours and 30 minutes, about 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity. So moderate aerobic activity is things, you know, that get your blood pumping, that get your heart rate up, brisk walking. So does that sound like a lot? Huh? No? Doesn't? How many of you think you get that? I mean, be honest, it's okay. I'm not seeing a lot of hands. 2 hours and 30 minutes, 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity, and then also muscle strengthening activities on 2 or more days, and that's all major muscle groups. So that's essentially full body, you know, upper body, lower body, and so on. And it does. I mean, I personally, when I see those numbers, it's a bit daunting. I mean, if I were to present that to a friend or a patient or somebody and say, well, you know, you really need to get, and that's often it's often how it's asked on some of the surveys, which I think is interesting, is, you know, how often in the last 7 days have you gotten 2 hours and 30 minutes of moderate aerobic activity, such as walking, et cetera, et cetera. And the numbers are really low. But what that actually breaks down to, if we think about it and do the math, which I'm not good at doing in my head, but I've done on the calculator, it basically comes down to about 20 minutes a day, every day of the week, or say 30 minutes, half an hour, 5 days a week. Okay, well that doesn't sound quite so daunting. That's not nearly as intimidating as 2 hours and 30 minutes. And then throw some muscle strengthening, some very simple muscle strengthening on top of that. 1 hour and 15 minutes of vigorous, so that was just moderate, but now we need to get some vigorous intensity. Now that's just where we're running or we're really getting our blood pumping and our heart rate up, and again, together with some muscle strengthening, or some equivalent combination of the two. And again, variety is the spice of life, and getting vigorous and balancing vigorous and moderate intensity is what's really important. And again, but that translates into about 15 minutes a day for about 5 days. Now, as we know, and as we see by our raise of hands, and I'll be the first to admit, I'm probably not in the zone here on this, although I'm definitely working on it. Only about 1 in 5 adults, generally fit adults, get this amount of aerobic activity and moderate and vigorous activity and muscle strengthening activity, according to these guidelines. So a couple points about this, is most people tend to focus on a single activity to get their physical activity. And it's really important to mix it up. The variety is very important when it comes to movement and being active at whatever age. And again, depending on your mobility and depending on your own particular goals and where you're at, that variety is still an important part. That is, be creative and choose among different types of physical activity, those relating to endurance, those relating to strength and muscle tone, balance, and flexibility. So those are kind of the 4 categories: the endurance, strength, and that's really your aerobic activity, strength, balance, and flexibility. And of course, balance and flexibility, as we know, are very important in the prevention of falls and those sorts of issues in your later years. But the other thing I want to mention, and I'm going to keep coming back to this Go for Life at the National Institute on Aging, because it is a fabulous resource if you're not familiar with it. And we are actually using this as a very key resource in the development of some of our physical activity as well as nutrition curriculum that we're developing at the Witte Museum for our adult programming and family programming. And so if you're not familiar with it, I would encourage you to check it out, because there are a lot of very easily printable tools. For example, under these 4 types of physical activity, for older adults or those with physical limitations, there's some very nice printouts of example exercises and little tips about how to do them safely, how to perform them safely and appropriately. And so it's a great thing. The other thing here is just the other key message, I think, the reason why I broke it down into those smaller things is 10 minutes at a time is fine. 5 minutes at a time is fine. Getting those, you don't have to get all that 2.5 hours and all that in at once. It's okay to start small, to set small attainable goals, and I'm going to come back to that, because that is a core principle of behind how we developed the HEB Body Adventure. We centered it around 3 themes. One is health IQ and health literacy. The second is what we call empowerment or setting small attainable goals, goal setting. And then the last one is wellness, and that's the trickier one because that's all about how do you then sustain those changes over time. But you can find some really wonderful exercise plans, sample plans, and so on, and activities at that Go for Life NIH site. What if I have a disability? Again, very important, and I'm not an MD. I'm much more skilled in talking about public health at the population level and also in the cultural realm. But the National Center on Physical Activity and Disability, again, is something that we've drawn on a lot in the development of our interactive exhibitions, our interactive activities, which are all ADA accessible, and we sort of very consciously worked toward, as you'll see, there's, for example, a virtual bike ride, and so we have a hand crank wheel that does the same thing with a stair stepper exercise that we have. We have a hand crank, hand pump, and some other things. And actually, this will lead to another point I'm going to come back to, which is just being active is important for a number of reasons, but important health benefits like stronger hearts, lungs, muscles, everyday mental well-being, which is huge, better ability to perform simple everyday tasks. But I'm also, the other reason, I'm not sure if I say this later, but I want to say it now, which is that we made a very conscious effort when we developed HB Body Adventure. Although I spoke about obesity, we made a very conscious effort not to focus it on weight loss as our ultimate goal. And because very important health benefits can accrue to individuals regardless of their size. Increased glucose control, better muscle tone, things like that, even in the absence of weight loss. And so we wanted, and again, in part because we're a museum, because we're in both the education and entertainment business, and it's been a really interesting balancing act for someone like me coming out of academia and very much in the education realm to try to find creative ways to cross over into edutainment, if you will, or entertainment. And so that kind of leads me to this next point, which is why on earth is the Witte Museum? And I'll be honest with you, this concept for the HB Body Adventure began as an idea about 4 years ago, about four and a half years ago, and it's taken us quite a while. It's a $5 million project, and it took us a long time to raise the money. It was the hardest $5 million that the museum's ever raised. And part of it was we got a lot of people saying, well, you're a museum. Why on earth are you doing health? Why public health? What does this have to do with medicine or health or health care? This is precisely why I got so passionate about this particular project, and it's because I was involved here with some colleagues, Bob Ferrer and others in family medicine, with doing some work out in the community looking at what we call a capability approach, which is looking at, when we make recommendations, be more physically active, eat more fruits and vegetables, drink more water. We can be very prescriptive about this. And we can look at the personal agency and we can blame the individual. We can say, look, they're just not making the right choices, they're not educated, they're whatever. But we also have to look at what are their feasible opportunities for translating those resources, what resources are available, and then what are the things that can facilitate or not facilitate them using them and accessing them. So we were really trying to tease apart, what resources are really out there, because what we were finding is that prescriptive approach and that very clinic-based and public health model of clinical intervention and encouragement and education alone was simply not working and not really pushing the dial. And that what was needed was something more dramatic and something really a cultural shift within our community towards more active lifestyles at younger ages that involve the whole family. Which brings us a little bit to the Witte. The Witte Museum is San Antonio's oldest museum. We like to think of we call ourselves the People's Museum. And it's and for a number of reasons, I'll show you in a second. But one of the things that we found in our research here at the medical school was that one of the primary drivers in why our older folks wanted to stay healthy or get healthier, what do you think their biggest motivator might have been?
For their grandchildren or for their family?
Family and grandchildren, you nailed it. That's it. To be around for their children and their grandchildren. And related to that, interestingly, that came up a lot was we don't want to be a burden on the family and their grandchildren. But the Witte Museum has been here for 87 years, and it is a really kind of unique place that sees generations, families coming together. So it's a civic space that families tend to come together in groups. In addition to school visits and individual visits, we get a lot of, particularly on our free Tuesdays, we get a lot of intergenerational, multi-generational visitation, and that's very important. So I'll come back to explaining all this body adventure, but we just celebrated our grand opening of this building, and what this is the HEB Science Treehouse. Some of you remember the old Science Treehouse. It's a little run down, it was a little worn out, it's been up since 1997, 96. Came time to rejuvenate it. And HEB came to us a few years back, as I said, about 4 years ago, before I was over there at the Witte, and they said, we need to do something different, something that's relevant to the community that will, and what is the community facing? What are some of the biggest issues? And obesity, obviously, type 2 diabetes, chronic preventable diseases were staring us in the face. And so we began, the Witte began a process of having a series of science summits where they invited a lot of us from the medical school and the public health sector to come over and brainstorm. And when I began to think about this, I was seeing an alignment with what our research was saying was needed, and I got very excited about it, and I basically pulled the CEO aside and said, I'm on board, I'll do whatever it takes to make this happen. And so they stole me away and became the curator for this, and have been working on this for the last 3 years. But we just opened about a little less than a month ago. And we have already seen through the building, we've seen over 17,000 people have come through. We see at the Witte, so this speaks to that issue of why a museum? Why is the museum doing this? Why the Witte in particular? Well, the Witte Museum, which is a natural science and history museum, the South Texas Heritage Museum, essentially, and has not typically been deeply involved in what we might think of as public health education or public health promotion. Although we've had exhibits, our largest grossing exhibit prior to very recently was the Human Bodies exhibit, actually, which we had a few years back, was wildly popular. But we see over 350,000 visitors each year. Last year it was over 400,000, and so we're growing. 80,000 actually now attend the museum each year free of charge, and that's largely during our free Tuesdays, but that also includes a lot of aggressive fundraising we do to bring in school groups, school kids, and field trips, and senior center trips when possible. About 150,000 school-age children, at any rate, and we're growing. But more interestingly, though, and the thing that got me really excited as kind of a public health data nerd about this this project was the demographic representativeness of the population that comes to the Witte. It is reflective of all. This is by city council district, the Visitation. And we really aggressively market, so we track this biannually through a marketing survey that we do, but we also do point of sale. We get zip codes and that kind of stuff at point of sale, so we can track who's coming in. And when we see the numbers going down in a particular sector of our city, or a particular socioeconomic group, we go out and we call those schools and we market in those neighborhoods and we try to bring them in because we take very seriously this responsibility for being the people's museum and for a responsibility towards civic engagement with the community. Our visitation numbers also reflect the ethnicity and the socioeconomic status of Bexar County almost precisely. So we're seeing a representative sample in addition to all something like 50 counties in Texas, or over 200 some counties in Texas and all 50 states. We get tourism as well. But so from my perspective, having sat in so many focus groups and surveys with folks here in the community about what was needed, and I said, well, here's a place that families are already going, and that's fun. This is the perfect place for public health promotion. This is an ideal place to try to find fun ways to get up, get active, get moving, learn some tips about how to prepare meals in a little healthier way, and so on. So we developed the HEB Body Adventure around 3 sort of core themes, which are to provide a safe haven, as I said, health IQ, health literacy. Just what do we know about our body? How does our anatomy, physiology work? How does and their relationship to personal behaviors? Empowerment. No single variable in health promotion, I think, has been so powerful as what Dr. Bandura calls self-efficacy, which is just simply the belief that, hey, I can do this. If somebody believes that they're capable of setting a goal and reaching it, if they have that conviction, they're far more likely to actually achieve that goal. And so part of what we've done and the way we've developed this is to try to encourage goal setting and coaching and that kind of thing, and to start where you are, set small goals, don't try to reach too high, break them down into small things. But another key part of that, and what we know from the evidence-based literature that is most supportive of developing self-efficacy, is social support and family support is absolutely critical, and community support. And so we try to build that into the experience as well, as you'll see. And then wellness is then offer some skills to how to sustain that once you go home. I don't know if we can queue up, there's a brief little video overview, and then I need to check the time, because I want to get you guys out of here earlier, but yeah, good. I'm doing okay. But I wanted to just give you a flavor of what you'll see in the Body Adventure. If we can queue it up, no worries. Just they're working on the internet access. But it's just a little video that we put together. We had an award ceremony with Mayor Castro and honoring both him and a wonderful 13-year-old Estrella Hernandez, who's developed a walking app to encourage people of all ages to get out and walk to different destinations, including the HEB Body Adventure. Anyway, so we put together this little video.
He's working on it.
I'm sure. I'm not. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Which were those areas that had the least people coming to the
The least, that's a good question. Here, let's go back and see. Because this is about a year. Whoops, I'm sorry. See, broke the rules.
there?
Oddly enough, it was District 2, which is the district the Witte Museum's in. But part of that is because of redistricting. There's been, as you may know, there's been some redistricting, redrawing of some of the district lines recently, so we are newly in that district, and at any rate. But it's pretty evenly split, 10 to 12% across the board. District 7, where's District 7? Who knows? I don't have the district map memorized real well. Anybody know exactly? Anyway. But it's pretty well represented across the board. And we watch that. When we see like District 7, when we start going under 8% or so, we get out there and we say, okay, we gotta call some schools, we gotta put some billboards up and some things like that and try to encourage them. And for example, one of the things I'm working on right now with the Metropolitan Health District is they've identified 10 neighborhoods that account for a disproportionate share of chronic disease and obesity in our community at the neighborhood level. And so I'm actually working with them to develop a number of proposals to try to underwrite trips to bring people in from specifically those targeted neighborhoods. Because those are the folks that often don't get an opportunity to visit a museum, other than maybe on our few free Tuesdays, which tend to be very crowded. And so we really want them to have this fun, safe, exciting experience and what we call transformative experience at the museum, like anyone else, and have that available to them across the city. Let's see. It's cool if it's not going to work. No worries. Yeah. Oh. Uh-oh. It doesn't exist.
Oh,
I played it this morning.
copyright violation.
I know, right? Maybe just refresh it and see if it pops up. If not, I'll just move on. It's cool. I can describe.
We had a question in the back.
Anybody invented the search engine?
Yeah.
And Dr. Bayles had a question in the back.
Yeah. Go ahead.
When are those free Tuesday hours?
Free Tuesdays are 3 to 8 p.m. Yeah, so every Tuesday from 3 to 8, the museum's free. And then in addition to that, like I said, we are in the process. We raise money to underwrite both school trips, but also something I'm really excited to try to do in this coming year is to start underwriting trips which we've done in the past for senior centers to bring them in and not just to experience it, but also to volunteer, because one of the things to volunteer and be part of teaching the younger generation. I think that's an opportunity we have with this body adventure for them to share their stories, particularly in the Culinary Kitchen. We have a new demonstration kitchen on the ground floor of the HEB Body Adventure. And I think it would be really exciting. Two things on the ground floor. There is, like I said, a demonstration kitchen, a culinary kitchen that we partnered with the Children's Hospital of San Antonio with, but also a toddler garden, a little place for the little ones. And it's, sorry, I can't see the video. There's giant fruits and vegetables, and they can kind of crawl through and tumble and so on. But another thing that I envision happening in that space that we have planned are story time. And I would love to see us harness some of our senior centers and senior volunteers to come in, read stories to the little ones. And of course we use books that talk about healthy living and that talk about physical activity and nutritious food and so on. And we already have a stack of these books and curriculum already sort of there. But we've been doing this. If it comes up later, we're cool. If not, I'm going to go ahead and I'll just describe it. I have some pictures that you can see. No one group can do this by itself. It's took a lot of partnerships. HEB, obviously, the University Health System came in. George Hernandez was amazing and got it right away and said, yes, this is exactly what we need. Blue Cross Blue Shield, a bunch of other folks. But then also at the community level, partnering with, like I said, Metropolitan Health District, SA 2020, the Mayor's Fitness Council, the YMCA, the Culinary Institute of America, which is over down by the Pearl. We work closely with them in developing our recipes as well in our Culinary Kitchen. One of the first things we did was we switched our vending to healthy vending. We did this sort of in a phased approach where we started off by getting all healthy vending options in our machines, as well as water, low-fat chips, baked chips, things like that. That went through a whole vetting process with dietitians in town. Also installing vegetable gardens, culinary herb and vegetable gardens, as well as a medicinal plant garden on the rooftop. But I'll just kind of describe the experience. When you come into the HEB Body Adventure, what you'll do is you'll sign in. And it's really funny because I wondered if there's elements of it that are sort of high tech, that use a lot of touch screen. And we thought, well, maybe our older visitors might not be as familiar with that. We're actually finding them to be extremely savvy. In some cases, savvier than the folks my age. And they're coming in and getting it right away. And what's most exciting, though, about watching families in this space is the conversations that occur, is the families coming together and having that dialogue. Oh, did you notice this? Watch this. And I'll try to describe some of those. But when you come in, you sign in. There's 6 different touchscreen sign-ins, and you'll pick a buddy, okay? And these are just a sample. There's actually 12 of them. So we have an older individual as well, not shown here, but you basically pick a buddy. And these are real people from San Antonio that we recruited about 3 years ago, and we put them through kind of a 3-month healthy lifestyle makeover, and it wasn't all about weight loss. Each of them set, Lexi, our youngest there, who's highlighted, she had never run a mile before, or even walked a mile. So her goal was to do a mile. So they each set their goal, and we had camera crews follow them through the whole process. And they took cooking classes. They came over here to the med school, took anatomy classes, got to hold real human hearts, see inside the body, and we filmed all this. So when you sign in, you'll get a little Power Pass card. It'll print out, you'll pick your buddy and it'll print out a little Power Pass card. And you take that card to different stations, different activity stations. There are activities in the HEB Body Adventure that don't require the card. I mean, there's like the gardens, like the Culinary Kitchen and the toddler garden. You don't need this high-tech card. But the card is a pass for certain activities. Now that allows a couple things. One, it allows us to build that peer support into the experience. So your buddy follows you. As you go through, your buddy pops up on videos with little tips and video clips from their experience. So for example, you'll do a virtual bike ride along the Mission Reach of the San Antonio River. And while you're doing it, you'll see, in real time, you'll see your own avatar cycling along, whether you're doing it with a hand crank or whether you're doing it seated on a cycle. It will also, you'll see your heart rate in real time and a target heart rate. And your buddy will pop up and talk about the benefits of aerobic activity and so on, and encourage you and that sort of thing. So we tried to create not only a personalized experience, but one that incorporated social support to build that self-efficacy into the experience itself. But then the other kind of exciting thing, again, from a public health standpoint, is on the back end, this allows us to collect some very powerful data. As I said, 400,000 people a year come through the museum, 150,000 school-age kids. We are able to collect, now this is all de-identified, it's not personally identifiable, so no names, no photographs, nothing like that is collected. And so I, in fact, managing this database, I can't go in and pull. And if you were to come to me and say, take my particular data out, I couldn't do that because I couldn't identify you. However, it's tremendous, on the back end, it's a tremendous amount of data that we're able to collect. And so we're actually able to collect, for example, height at one station, one activity, weight at another, which allows us to calculate BMI. At sign-in, we get age and gender, as well as your zip code if you know it. And then there's another activity, for example, called All About You, where you answer some questions about yourself while you build a little character, a little animated character, because at the end of the experience, when you sign out, you get a little take-home card called a Power Profile that's kind of a record of your experience. So so it takes a picture of your head and it puts it on this avatar. So and it asks you, oh, what's your favorite healthy snack? And what's your favorite way to stay active? And things like that. But all of that at the back end allows us to capture data as well. And then on top of that, which we will share with the city and the Metropolitan Health District and the public at large, in these quarterly aggregate reports, which hopefully that we will be able to break down by geographic region, by age, to try to get some snapshots over time, over the years that we're open, about seeing if we're starting to move the dial on some of these very basic behaviors. BMI obviously be one, but also, and perhaps more importantly, general quality of life, fruit and vegetable consumption, soda consumption, that's another one that we slipped in there. So let me just tell you some of the activities there that you'll get. South Texas TrailBlaze is as I said, a virtual bike ride, and we went out there with a little GoPro camera and we filmed the beautiful amenities that are developing along the San Antonio River, and so it's an actual real-time ride along the new Mission Reach, and that was important to us because both this and another station that I'll show you, Pick Up Your Pace, are centered around the river and parks that are available in the community, because we want folks to come, have an experience, start that discussion, just spark it, inspire it a little bit, but then go back out into their community and take advantage of some of the resources that are available, the trails and parks and so on. Pick Up Your Pace, visitor walks across a motion capture screen, or even wheelchairs. It's wheelchair accessible, right? Goes across, and it captures a little animated video of your silhouette as you go across, and it gives you an energy score. And it's basically based on your stride length and your speed as you go. So if you walk really silly across it, or as I did once, I moonwalked across it. And then you can use that to go to the next station, and it will calculate, and it'll tell you how long it would take you to go the entire San Antonio River trek from Mission Espada up to the Witte Museum, which is about 13 miles. So it'd take me about 10 hours to moonwalk it, just in case you're curious. But walking is key, and I mention that because walking has also been shown in our surveys and the research as being one of the most preferred ways of being physically active in our community. And it's also one of the simplest and cheapest. Now there are some barriers to that, which we'll touch on in a minute, but let me just show you some more. This is, again, your buddy pops up, you see your avatar in real time as you cycle through, as well as looking at your heart rate. You are what you drink. This is, visitors come and they step on a giant, there's a giant soda cup, and they'll step on a stair stepper, and it says, oh, would you like to choose water or a sweet drink? And then if you choose a sweet drink, you can choose a size. And then it says, great, now let's see how long it'll take you to work that off. And so you start, let's say you choose the supersized sweet drink or energy drink. You'll be on there for a little while. And it's a fun, and this is one of those areas I love watching families interact, particularly the older folks, having this conversation with the kids as they're doing it. And they're both learning. It's like surreptitious teaching moments occurring. Yeah, there's the big soda cup and the stepper machine. There are some other things you'll see. It's 4 stories, it's 4 floors of these interactive activities, as well as outdoor areas, as I mentioned, the vegetable gardens and the culinary herb gardens. We also have murals. We have real plastinated anatomical specimens, so we have an entire GI tract from top to bottom that talks about the digestion process. And this is more sort of, I guess, what you'd stereotypically think of as a health exhibit. But because of the popularity of the Art Bodies exhibit and so on, we knew this would be an interesting part of it. This is the All About You activity that takes your photo and asks you some questions. There's your little scanner for your PowerPass card, and it's a lot of fun. And you get feedback, you get little sound effects, and again, we're finding that these games, these interactive games, are appealing across our age groups, which has been really fun to watch. Because one of the things we tried to do differently with the H-E-B Body Adventure is, in the past, the treehouse has often been thought of as just a children's place. And we really want to shift that. We're going to have a spectacular children's museum going in very close down the street from us. And so we are working very hard to increase the outreach and visitation among our adult and older populations, which we already, as you can tell from the representative, we already get them, but we want them to understand that this treehouse also is not just for kids anymore. It's it's a multi-generational space, and actually that's when it really works best, is what we're finding so far. The other key thing, I talk about physical activity, and I went over some little guidelines at the national level, but nutrition is a huge part. We have a whole bunch of culinary programs, but we really, really wanted to emphasize and have it be a point to talk about quality of life and relaxation, because so many of our unhealthy behaviors around physical activity, but particularly eating, are driven in part by unhealthy responses, or I wouldn't even say unhealthy, I'd say unskilled or unmindful approaches, responses to stress and anxiety. And so, obviously, we can approach this in a number of ways, but so we worked in a few components that talk about the importance of relaxation, rest, and quality sleep, for example, into the experience. So this, for example, is it's a little biofeedback sensor where you place your hand on a sensor, and as you relax, as your heart rate slows and your breathing slows, a digital light slows around this circle. It goes around in a circle, and if your heart rate's amped up, it'll be red and it'll be going pretty fast. And then as you relax, and it plays some relaxing music, and it'll slow down. Another one, which I'm not sure if I have a picture of, but is one of my favorites, and again, I love watching families have competitions about this, but it's a table, and you put a sensor, a little headband on, and you sit on one side of the table, and then you sit across, you have an opponent or a family member sit on the other side of the table, and they put the little headband, and there's little sensors on it. Again, it's based on biofeedback, which is transmitted to a magnet under a table. So what happens is, as you relax, and of course you see your relaxation, your alpha and theta waves displayed on the monitor, both you and your opponent. As you relax, a little ping pong ball is pushed towards your opponent, and as they relax, it's pushed towards you. And so you're trying to score a goal. It's sort of competitive relaxation, which is a bit of an oxymoron, but it's a lot of fun, and we find people getting really silly about it, but it makes the point, because that was the other thing we were learning, is that, and many of our physicians were telling us, they're like, look, we can prescribe change, we can tell people they need to do X, Y, Z, but we want some people in the community who will inspire it and who will make it fun. And so that's kind of the vision. We'll see to the extent that we've succeeded at this, and like I said, we've just begun, and we have a lot more work to do. But like I said, the gardens, this is the Culinary Kitchen, and again, this is another area where we specifically designed the kitchen modeled after a home kitchen. We didn't want it to look like this high-end expensive utilities. We wanted to empower our visitors that, hey, you can do this at home. All of our cooking demonstrations are usually only about 4 ingredients. And typically we use something that's growing seasonally in the garden as one of the ingredients so that we can make that connection to gardening. In our gardens, we specifically chose not to put them in the ground, but to put them in containers. Again, with some signage encouraging people that even with limited space, you can have a container, you can grow tomatoes. Gardening is a fabulous way to be physically active in your, at all ages, but there's some really phenomenal research actually that's been done gardening and physical activity among seniors. It's very, very helpful in addition to contributing to quality of life. Let me see, what else I got here? I'm going to skip over some stuff because I want to leave some time for some questions and just talking. But so I don't know, I just wanted to mention too some of the partners that we've been working with so much and that I've gotten to know, been so blessed really to be hooked in now with the Mayor's Fitness Council. And some of these efforts, these citywide efforts like Ciclovia, Fit Pass, which is something you may or may not be aware of, which is a program by San Antonio Parks, where you can go on the website for Fit Pass 2.0, download a little booklet, or you can pick them up at various places. It'll tell you. Fit City SA is really the place to start, and I would say everybody in the city should be familiar with this website. Because it's really becoming our clearinghouse, both for events and activities at the Body Adventure and the Witte Museum, but also all of these other partnership events and activities. Ciclovia, where we close off, which is now twice a year. This is an idea that started in Colombia, actually, and occurs very regularly down there. But it began back in the 70s, this notion of closing off streets and basically creating what are essentially temporary parks in the hearts of the city. And the attendance at San Antonio Ciclovia has grown marvelously by the thousands over the last 2 years. And so that will happen twice a year. B-Cycle is a bike ride sharing program. We just got a B-Cycle station at the Witte Museum this past year. For those who are able, it is a wonderful way to cycle. You can actually spend the whole day on a bike, on a B-Cycle for free. If you map out your route, because you have a half an hour. If you go to another B-Cycle station and check in, and then check it back out, you'll get another free half hour. The first half hour is free, and then it begins to charge you. But there's also annual passes and weekly passes and things like that that are very affordable. But Fit Pass, so this is, it's a little passport, and then on the website, there are a number of activities throughout town that you get points. They'll stamp your book, basically, and Coming to the Body Adventure as well is one of those. And then at the end, you can turn your Fit Pass in, your booklet with it. It's like a little passport, and be entered into drawings for some pretty awesome prizes. Fitness in the park, again, there are Tai Chi classes, yoga classes, as well as for all age groups, now being offered for free in many of the parks in San Antonio. And you can find out more info at fitcitysa.com. But we also, the other thing which I don't have pictures of because we just finished a lot of it, is the very top floor of the Body Adventure is what we call the Serenity Space, and I talked a little bit about relaxation. So we put chimes up there because this is in development. We put some beautiful chimes up there. We replaced what used to be called Bang It and Clang It, which was very loud and energetic. We put they're called happy drums, and they're these beautiful sounding melodic drums. I'm myself am a drummer, and so I lobbied for this really hard because I had also we also envision this serenity floor as being a movement space and a gentle space, and a space where we are going to have our programs, for example, Tai Chi classes, for our seniors and others, and caregivers as a place to unwind. And these happy drums, I don't know if any of you have seen, there's some fabulous, fabulous research done on drum circles in senior centers and nursing homes. And I have personally witnessed some really remarkable, I wish I had a video to show you. It's just, there's some, if you ever get on YouTube and just do senior center drumming circles, and it will touch your heart. The transformation you will see and again, I think it's because rhythm and melody can tap into some very deep emotions in us, and so some folks, and doing it in a group, as we do with these happy drums, where they're around a table and they're in a circle, doing this as a group activity is somehow conducive and supportive of this kind of nurturing, supportive environment. And so, and seeing families do that together is a lot of fun. We also, I'm not going to belabor, FitCitySA.com, it's a great, I mean, the good news is that in San Antonio, we have over 41 miles of parks and trails already, green spaces. And that those are expected to double in the next couple of years. Former Mayor Howard Peaks, this was his vision and the hard work of many, many, many people. But we definitely still have some challenges. For example, in some of the research that I was involved with Dr. Ferrer, who does just phenomenal work, we asked hundreds of folks, mostly seniors diagnosed with diabetes and their family members here in San Antonio. We asked them about a number of resources and things available to them and what they used, what they didn't use. But when we examined 4 physical activity questions, for example, do you feel safe in your neighborhood after dark? Which is important for walking and getting out. Do you have an indoor place to do physical activity? Does your partner support, do you have your partner's support for physical activity? And then do you have a friend or friend's company who can accompany you when you do your physical activity, whatever it may be? We found that nearly 50% of our respondents reported 0 or only 1 of those in the positive. So there are significant barriers that we need to overcome. The Witte Museum, obviously, we can't solve all that. This is just one of many efforts and to try to begin to create safe havens, safe places, environments that are open, that are fun, that are conducive to families getting together and engaging in physical activity and social support and relaxation and these kinds of things. Poor walkability. These are all, and a lot of this has to do with our built environment. And I'm really excited as a member of the Mayor's Fitness Council to see this getting a lot of attention. In fact, there was just a conference on public health and the built environment that was really phenomenal, bringing in urban planners and some of our best local talent here to begin to talk about and tackle some of these issues, these design issues. So I'm going to stop there because I can but again, I would love. I want you to be familiar, if you're not already, with this site, because it's very empowering, it's very upbeat, it's very positive in its messaging, which is very much what we were guided by our steering committees of medical professionals to do in the body adventure for a number of reasons. I guess I'll just stop there. And if there are any questions or comments and I ask you, please contact me, come up, talk with me after. If you have ideas, I have several ideas about how we could engage better our senior community and involve them more. but I'm looking for, I've been tasked by my boss to really explore this more and to reach out. And so if you have some ideas, talk to me because we'll make it happen. Because I think, no museum frankly, no museum in the nation's really done this. There's really nothing like this out there. There are some health exhibits, tend to take a more traditional approach. They don't tend to be focused on the whole body, the whole sort of holistic approach and wellness, physical activity, and nutrition altogether. Although there is a growing movement in the museum field to do this. But I think it's an interesting use and fun crossover, a translation of public health into what is typically an education and entertainment field. So I've been learning a lot. It's been a challenge and it's been really interesting. Yeah.
When someone goes through your event at the Witte, do they get a printout at the end to
Yeah.
tell them about their own experience?
Yeah, they get this.
They might make.
Yeah, they get this power profile, which let me see if I can find it here. And it's a card. It's about this big, and it prints out, and it's really just a very simple kind of record of some of the different. Those are the different sides of it. One is just graphics and health IQ, empowerment, and wellness, and with some messaging. But there's an activity, for example, where you can sit and grab a bar and see your heart rate. See your heartbeat in real time. And we wanted to make it fun and empowering rather than sort of, because most of the times when you see your heart rate, it's because you're in the cardiologist's office and something's not right. And so here you get to see it just kind of in the everyday normal setting, and you get a little messaging from your buddy. So you get this little graphic printout from which it takes a snapshot from your read. But frankly, we stayed away from, you get your stride length, your target heart rate from the bike activity, your energy score, but we stayed away from real clinical, meaningful data because we don't want folks coming thinking, that they're coming to a gym or getting a diagnosis or something. We have to be careful about that. We don't want to send the message that something's wrong with their heart or that they, but this isn't an appropriate place for that. And so, it's been a little tricky balancing, well, how do we give them some record? And so how we envision this being used is that to spark that conversation. It's a memory, it's a memento. Oh, you remember the time we went to it's a shared, oftentimes if the family went together, they can talk about it. It'd be great if they showed up at their doctor's and say, hey, I went to the Bioventure, what do you think? Even though obviously there's really nothing there that they could do, it could potentially open a window for a discussion about physical activity or about nutrition, which we know, unfortunately doesn't happen enough in the clinical setting. So, we'll see. And actually that's one of the things as evaluator for this as well, I'm going to be asking folks about this. What did you do with your time? Did you throw it away? Did you, did you find it useful, or was it fun? Did you ever, and actually through some of our clinics we're going to ask them, did anybody ever come in with one? I'm real curious. We don't really know how it will be used, but we wanted them to walk away with some kind of, take home, just for fun. Anybody else? Questions?